All right, everybody. Today I'm joined with Mike Brigandi. How's it going, Mike?
What's up? What's up? Thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being on. I just wanted to briefly start with why you went vegan and like what was your decision to go vegan?
Yeah, so that's a quick intro. I've been a vegan for about 6 years now, and
Hmm.
it happened around summertime in 2018 when I really realized that my health was kind of bad and I was kind of feeling sluggish. So I decided to go do some research on like the best diet, and I started to learn more about animal farming. And on one night, I came across a video of an animal slaughter, a cow being hung up by its legs, being slaughtered, and its legs were kicking while it was being slaughtered. When I was watching that video, I I first made the connection between the animals and the morality aspect to it. I started to make the connection, like, wait a minute, why am I harming this cow, right?
Hmm.
Um, just a day ago, I was researching the best steaks, the best meat to buy, but then I realized with that one video that there was something wrong I was doing, and I put my computer, I put my iPad, I was watching it on an iPad, I put it down, and I was like, I walked past my dogs, and they were there because I had two German shepherds at the time, and I just looked into their eyes, and I remembered all the past events I had with them, all the memories we shared together. So that kind of solidified the fact that if I view a dog as something precious and family, but yet I'm also at the same time harming this cow who's pretty much no different than that from that dog. There's a misalignment there. So that night I decided to really cold turkey just go vegan, and it changed my life since then.
That's amazing. So it wasn't like a transition period, right? It was just like an instant thing.
It was pretty instant, yes,
Hmm.
and it has a lot to do with my scientific background because science disciplines you to think very quickly and adapt to new information. And that's how I've been trained my entire life. When I confront something that I don't understand or that challenges my view and has evidence behind it and has reasons behind it, I change no matter what it is. So that kind of helped and aided my progression to veganism as well.
And did you dive into like debating too right away, or was that something that came after a
Oh,
period of time?
oh no. I was very so throughout my entire life. I was extremely shy. I didn't like talking in public at all. I, I had a lot of ideas, but I didn't. I wasn't quite ready for all that stuff. In fact, I rejected a lot of the social media stuff. I wasn't even on it. But that changed around 2019, 2020 time when I first got on TikTok, and I realized that TikTok is a platform that I can use for the benefit of people. Because I first went on TikTok and I saw people dancing, right? People, what's your face? The girl that dances. This is back in 2020.
Hmm.
And I saw them getting like thousands and millions of views. I was like, this is what they're using this platform for.
Yeah.
So I posted a video, my first video on TikTok got like 500 views. I was like, holy moly, 500 views is a lot for a first video relative to YouTube. So let me go ahead and make more videos. And I made a promise to myself that if I was going to become a content creator, that I used it to spread awareness of good causes and spreading positive information and correct information, and not waste my fame or whatever, not fame, but waste my popularity on dancing, things that don't really contribute much to society.
Did you start out when you were making videos? Was it about veganism at first, or was it about atheism, or?
Uh, it was more about atheism, but there was some veganism there too. Um, but I didn't really get into like real debates until maybe 2021, 2022. Uh, but yes, it was a mix of both at first. Yes.
Okay, great. I want to dive into some of like the arguments that you might have heard and just like what your general idea of certain things is. So, it's something I hear a lot is like, why should someone go vegan? Like, what would be your response to that if somebody was saying that to you?
That question is that's like asking, the real question is, why are you not vegan? And the reason I say this is because most people inherently are usually good people. They don't have bad intentions for the most part. It's just that they're misinformed. They're more misinformed than they are bad. So when it comes to the question, why should I go vegan? The real thing is, why shouldn't you go vegan? You should be informed on what it means to be vegan and how to become vegan. Um, and that is the case that you're harming animals. You already know, most people already know that harming animals is wrong. If you tell an average person on the street, is it okay to abuse an animal? They say, of course it's wrong to abuse an animal. Of course it's wrong. So it shouldn't be too much of a stretch to extrapolate this to the other animals, especially the farm animals. So that's why the question itself is kind of premature. It's not the right question to ask. But again, it's more of an education that people need to get to really become vegan.
Yeah, and I hear that a lot too. Like people come to me and they say, like, what kind of benefits do I get out of it? And it's not really about benefiting yourself. It's about not causing harm to others. So it's kind of like it would be like a straight person saying, like, what kind of benefit do I get from not being homophobic? Right. It's you might not be getting a personal benefit from it, but it's like a moral obligation. Would you classify veganism as like a moral obligation?
I would, yes. Of course, this depends on your total ethical view.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, I think again, like I said, was saying before, most people already agree that animal abuse is wrong. So it just follows from that veganism would be the correct moral principle to abide by. Um, and then what was your question before that?
Um I can't even remember now.
What was the question again? I forgot.
uh yeah, it was just if it was a moral obligation, like do you think it applies like to everyone? Like do you think that regardless of somebody's like ethical stance, do you think it is a moral obligation, or
Oh
do you
yeah,
think there's
yeah, I think it is a moral obligation.
yeah,
Um, I forgot what I was going to say, but yeah, I think everybody should be vegan because look, veganism is not a diet. Oh yeah, I remember now. The first thing you said was, what does it benefit me? And look, that's a very, very human thing to say. How do I,
yeah,
where do I get benefit from this? That's a very human thing to say. Very natural to say that. Uh, but again, you have to recognize that just as you think abusing a dog is wrong, we don't ask ourselves, well, what's the benefit of me not abusing a dog? No,
yeah,
it's a very intuitive thing to recognize that abusing a dog is wrong. The same applies with veganism. So again, from our points of view, as vegans, we view these questions as ridiculous.
yeah.
But of course, we have to acknowledge that our opposition doesn't have that same point of view. So we have to be sure to adapt to our audience and make sure that they understand, again, inform them on what veganism means and why we are, and make the connection between veganism and their current positions that they already have that align with veganism, such as let's not abuse dogs or cats.
Yeah. And I think sometimes in life, choosing the immoral option might actually be the easiest option as well. Like it might be easier to exploit somebody or take advantage of them, but that doesn't make it morally justified just because it's going to benefit you to do the wrong thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I
All
agree.
right. I want to get onto some of the arguments that you hear. Like, what are common things that you hear that people say, like why they aren't vegan?
Well, the first thing you say is, you know, health wise, where's my protein? Where's that
Yeah.
B12? Where am I going to get my B12 from? Isn't it healthier? Right. And the common thing you hear is, well, I'd rather be healthier. But this is also misinformation. You can be very healthy as a vegan. You can get all the protein you need. All plants have protein. Uh, you can get all the B12 you need as a vegan. Mushrooms, all kinds of, some plants have it. You can also supplement with it. It's a very, very easy thing to do to get all your nutrients and to be very healthy as a vegan.
Do you think that's people that aren't caught up with nutrition science, or do you think it's people that are just dishonest?
I don't think it's inherent dishonesty when they say that. I think they're just kind of reacting a little bit to
Mm,
veganism. They're saying, well, why is this guy vegan? Let me just say my health, right? It's a very easy, kind of like escape um, from accountability. But I think that, yes, a lot of it has to do, it's a mix with the fact that a lot of people don't understand nutritional science. They don't understand the fact that plants have protein. I mean,
yeah.
I went to Chipotle a couple days ago to get a bowl, and the first thing I got a bean bowl with beans and rice and stuff, and um, the cashier was like, "Oh, what's your protein?" Beans and rice. And how about the avocado? And how about the peppers have protein? I mean, everything in that bowl had protein. With just because I don't have meat in it doesn't mean there's no protein. So the average person does not understand that plants have protein. And so again, this part of the education. That's a lot of the resistance against veganism is the fact that people are largely ignorant about nutrition.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I hear is, why, what's like you said, what's in it for me, or why should we go vegan? They're just animals. Again, a lot of people are just disconnected fundamentally from who the animals are, and a lot of people will say, well, animals aren't someone, right? If we address an animal as someone, people lose their crap.
Yeah.
They go crazy. An animal's not someone, it's a thing, it's an object. Well, I'm sorry, but how about a dog or a cat? I was watching a video a couple of days ago about a bird that one of their beak was became detached or something, or broke off a little part of it, and they were in the hospital. They were putting a new beak on it. It's a bird. Obviously, you are sympathetic towards birds and cats and dogs. How are they any different from the other animals, the farm animals, pigs and cows especially, who are very intelligent emotionally and in terms of logic and reasoning? They're very intelligent animals. Um, so a lot of it has to do with the fundamental disconnection between who the animals are, the fact that they have consciousness. I mean, a lot of people don't even know that they have consciousness. A lot of people don't even understand that animals feel pain. That is something that many people still don't comprehend. So again, it's a large part of the resistance against veganism is the fact that people remain largely ignorant on many of the issues regarding animals, and it's just a matter of vegans calmly educating people the right way, and turns out to be a hard thing to do when your opposition is just so blatantly biased and suffering from cognitive dissonance, um, and are so willing to just go along with other people who disagree with the vegan because it's just easy. There's a lot of difficulties in debating against non-vegans. A lot of difficulties, but that's what we have to do as vegans if we want to continue propagating the movement.
Yeah, it's kind of like the cool thing online now is for people to like attack vegans. It's like I guess it's the easy thing to go against. I think it's because veganism is so small that it's not like these other like justice movements where, people realize they have more traction. But with veganism, like people refuse to agree, like, or even engage with the subject. So they think it's like the easiest thing to attack. Would you agree with that?
Yes, it is easy to attack veganism, but it's easy to attack many other things. Um, I also think that the reason why we see a lot of this rebellious kind of attitude towards veganism, a lot of people go carnivore in spite, despite veganism. Um, it's because they feel like there's a threat to them. They feel like veganism is a threat because it's taken away, some of their foods, perhaps. Maybe at the store they see vegan stuff, or like, oh, I don't like that. It's just different. And look, it's a very human thing to do as well, to just not like things that are different from what you're used to. Things that differ from the status quo are very, very, or things that are counterintuitive are very difficult to accept at first. So again, more resistance. And yeah, so these are things that vegans have to keep in mind when trying to help people go vegan.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you see this like with any type of thing, whether it be like renewable energy or any of these spaces, even atheism too. If you're like discussing with a Christian, like people refuse to just try to see a thing from a different perspective. And I think that's what causes a lot of confrontation because you're basically having them question their entire reality and having them look upon, how they were taught as by their family or their society. Like if somebody grew up religious, for instance, like they're going to be questioning their entire aspect, maybe they're all of their friends. So it is a difficult thing. I can understand. I'm like personally, I came from like a hunting background, like I had family that hunted and stuff. So for me, when I got into like learning about veganism, I started trying to debunk it. So that's where I started from. I'm like, oh well, I'm going to show these vegans and I'm going to go online and debunk it. And I remember searching like humane slaughter into Google and coming up and watching like slaughter footage and be like, wait, where's the humane slaughter? So,
Mm.
but I think I was curious and that's what changed my perspective. And I don't know if other people are really that curious that are willing to look into these things themselves.
Look, I think that people are curious for the most part. It's just that society has a way of indoctrinating us into certain beliefs and ideologies. Uh, Parents, families, friends, and another thing is that it's just normal, and it's taught so much. It's so deeply ingrained in us that animal products are just a part of your diet, and that's it, nothing more. And like you were talking about before, it's a cultural thing for many people. You know, oh, don't mess with my food. It's part of my culture. My culture does it. Look, these are just all the resistances against a lot of resistances against veganism, vegans, and we have to figure out a way. We have to do better as vegans and trying to calmly educate people into realizing that, into making the connection between the animals and who they are, that it's not just a thing on your plate, that there's somebody behind that meat, there's somebody behind that, um, with thoughts and feelings and emotions. People are connected to this, right? And I see a lot of vegans who debate these topics and they just berate the berate the opposition. Oh, why do you kill animals? It's, that's terrible. You shouldn't be doing that. Well, even though you're right, as a vegan, to do that, to say that, that isn't the best approach. A better approach is to kind of like befriend them. Look, nobody wants to be told things. They want to be, nobody wants to be told to do your homework, right? If I told you, do your homework, versus saying, look, I know you don't want to do your homework, but if you do this, perhaps you'll get a grade and maybe we'll go out to do something in the future. See, those two different approaches can change the way you behave better than one where you're just saying you should go vegan. It's better. You should go vegan. The animals are suffering because of you, right? Even though you're right, that's not the best approach. So, uh, look, the thing I'm concerned about is a lot of vegans who want to be activists, which is great. And I think everybody should be an activist as if you're a vegan, but we have to do better in expressing what veganism means and kind of creating a sense of identity amongst vegans. A lot of people, a lot of people are confused as to what veganism means. We have to help people make those connections better.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is really important for any kind of activism, even if you're going to do, discussions on atheism or any type of things. I think a lot of people, like you said, they lead with confrontation and they say, "Well, you don't agree with me, get out of here," or something. But like you said, people are coming from a place of ignorance, so I think it's better to lead people in with kindness and explain things to them rather than to just attack them or go after them. So yeah, intuitively to me, that makes perfect sense that that would be the better option.
Yeah, but it's counterintuitive for many people because look, it's horrible what our people are doing to the animals, right? It really is horrible. So, it's something that intuitively speaking, for many vegans especially, they want to sit there and say, no, that's terrible what you're doing. Bad, bad, bad. You should be ashamed of yourself for not being a vegan. Um, Although they have every right to think that, as many people do, um, it's not the best approach to do that.
Yeah, I
So
think, and I've heard a lot of vegans say this too. I don't know if it was the case with you, but when I first went vegan, I started like spamming social media with the slaughter footage and stuff like that, and things people calling people animal abusers and things along those lines. And now that like years spent in doing debates and discussions with people, now I think it's almost better to share a video of like, hey, look, this cow has emotions and they're like a thinking, feeling being, rather than spam people with slaughter footage and stuff along those lines. Like, it seems like that's more effective.
yeah, exactly. And that's what I've, if you noticed some of my videos on my YouTube channel, I have a video called, 10 animals that proved us wrong, right? It's about animals that have stories behind them, animals that were, I have expressed that I don't label them as objects. I've now shown them as somebody, as beings with thoughts and feelings and emotions. So that's the kind of thing that I want to see more of, and less of this. You know, don't you know what you're doing to these animals? You're making them suffer bad.
Yeah,
That's not very effective if we want to continue effectively helping more people go vegan. I mean, if we want to get to 10%, we don't even need 100% people go vegan. Even 3% is making huge impacts on the world around us. I mean, lots of companies are now adopting veganic foods in their menus. Even Burger King and McDonald's have
yeah.
implemented, even KFC. So that's good. Even 3% of vegans in the world is doing tremendous amounts of work to help the
Do you
world.
think it's? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, even 10% will be
Yeah,
even 10%. I mean, a lot of people don't. This is another reason why what non-vegans say, oh, only 3% of people are vegan. Why should I go vegan if nobody else is going to? We don't need everybody to go vegan. Only
yeah,
10% of people would have huge spillover effects that
yeah.
would spill over into every aspect of life, because 10% is a heck of a lot of animals. So, God.
Do you think from like, and this is a pretty hot button topic too with a lot of vegans, do you think that somebody reducing their meat intake or something along those lines, or maybe stop wearing fur or stop wearing leather, do you think that that's a positive thing, or do you think that people necessarily have to transition to being fully vegan?
Well, I think it's positive to reduce your animal consumption and animal usage. But ultimately, look, if you have the ability to go vegan, fully vegan, yes, you should be fully vegan. I think you're obligated to do so, and it's not very hard. It's not very
Yeah,
hard at all. But yes, of course, I recognize that there are parameters in which we all exist within that limit our ability to do certain actions. I have a gasoline car right now. I'm sure there's some animal products in there, and there's less in other cars, but I don't have the financial ability to change cars. So, there's all kinds of different parameters we exist within. But at the same time, I think that most, if not everybody, can just simply stop eating animal products and not buy leather, things like that.
yeah, I would agree too. I think you have to look at it from like a rights-based perspective and see that, in this given situation that you're in, you should try to reduce the amount of harm that you're causing to animals. But obviously nobody's perfect and we live in like a non-vegan world, so we're going to have a lot of issues with these sort of things.
Yeah, I say, a lot of people say, well, do the best, do what's practical but no, I think practical is the wrong word. It should be what's practicable, which means to do as much as you can and be successful at it. That's the better term to use when it comes to veganism, because there are things that are practical but not attainable successfully. We couldn't really have that. Like, for example, it's practical to sit there and watch your footsteps for an ant that walks by, but are we going to be able to be successful at doing that when we go outside it? No, that's ridiculous. That would be ridiculous to do. I can't not go to work because there might be an insect that flies onto my window and gets killed by the windscreen. That's not a very practicable thing to do. So again, there's all, like you're saying, we live in a non-vegan world, and there's different parameters we must exist within, and try our best to do the best we can at being while being successful at veganism.
Yeah, I think there's like thresholds of utility that you would gain from an action that would make it justified in certain scenarios. And I think a lot of people miss that when it comes to veganism, where they think it's like an all or nothing thing where, obviously we're going to unalive some animals driving cars on the road, but like the benefit that we get as individuals and to society, I think would outweigh the amount of harm that we're causing to animals. And like this would be, to me, would be like a given, like per each scenario would be different. Would you kind of agree with that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. For in the case of the example of me hitting a bug with my windshield, well, that drive allowed me to go to work to make money. Then I can come back and produce content on my phone that I bought with the money I got from the drive to then promote veganism. More people are going vegan, right? So yes, maybe a bug got killed on my windscreen, but I've helped thousands of people go vegan because of that. So, you have to keep that in mind as well, that it's not like you're saying all or nothing thing. It's not we don't live in a perfect world, but we're doing the best to maximize utility, positive utility within certain thresholds.
And this goes on to a topic that I hear a lot of like anti-vegans say in these discussions, and I do see a lot of vegans struggle with this, where they say like, is it more ethical to stop eating something like spices because it's not necessary, right? Or to don't eat a vegan cupcake or do this because it's causing crop deaths or the transportation is going to hit more animals or something like. What would your response to something like that?
Yeah, again, that assumes a purely utilitarian approach to veganism, where you have to do the most you can to minimize any harm possible. No, again, the utility that things like spices provide will far outweigh the negative utility of perhaps animals that may be harmed in the process of their production, as well as the fact that when it comes to crop deaths and crop field deaths, we don't vegans are not committed to believing that those deaths are rights violations. We don't think that's a rights violation because we're not actively taking away their rights. And that's why we don't even see crop deaths as an issue, because if we don't grow those crops, we die. And we can't control what happens with squirrels on the crop fields. We didn't decide to kill them. They came to the crop fields and decided to consume our crops that we're growing for ourselves. How is that our fault that those animals died? So we don't see that as a violation. It's along the lines of protecting our own food so that we can survive and things like that. So yeah, there's all kinds of nuances here that the typical person who opposes veganism will not comprehend and not be willing to comprehend unless we calmly and educate them on these issues and open them and create an aperture for them to really listen to what we have to say, instead of saying, no, you're wrong, don't worry about that, there's no big deal, right? No, we have to take on the challenges they bring us. The hardest questions we should be answering, right? The hardest questions about veganism, we all should be answering. We shouldn't just shun them away. Oh no, you think crop deaths are bad, or are bad, therefore you're not going to be. That's ridiculous. Off, right? Click. That's not. We should be welcoming the challenges and answering them everywhere we can.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important to really to engage with whatever somebody's bringing up. But another point to bring onto that, where people bring up spices, what I like to say is like bring it to name the trait, right? Where like there's a certain amount of humans that die in industries every year, so we're not going to say that that's akin to like enslaving and murdering somebody. So it's like they're trying to make it where an animal is being unalived, maybe in the transportation or in the production of these crops, but humans are also being unalived in that process as well. So, to say somebody couldn't be vegan because of that or couldn't be a human rights activist because of that is insane to me.
Right. That's a good point. Yes. Equalizing the traits is very important. Very, very good tool to use in these conversations. Yeah.
Another question I get, and you usually get this from like hunters or like fishermen or things along those lines is like, well, I only kill one animal, and like being a vegan, you kill a ton of animals. Like, what would be your response to somebody that brings something like that up?
Yeah, this is a great question. I'm a hunter. I only kill one animal. Or you're killing thousands in the crop fields. Well, first of all, you're not killing one animal. It's not possible. Do you drink? What do you drink? What kind of stuff do you use to put on that meat? What kind of stuff do you eat for snacks? What kind of You're not eating just one animal per year at all. There's no way you're eating one animal per year. But let's say you were. Um, Again, this assumes that veganism means the less harm, the better. That's not what veganism means. It's not a. We're not committed to this purely utilitarian view of veganism, where whoever causes the least amount of harm is the best. Again, we're talking about doing the best you can with what you have, and you're still harming the principle of veganism is still being what's it called? You're still not you're still going against the veganism principles by hunting one animal per year because you're still taking the life of an animal away that didn't have to be. You're still harming it. You're still taking its rights away. Whereas with the vegan, we don't view any rights being taken away from any animals because the animals that die in the crop fields, like I was saying before, we don't view them as rights violations because we don't control those crop deaths. So again, we have to be you have to bring up these nuances here to really make the opposition understand where you're coming from, because it's a very easy thing to do to say I only kill one animal per year and then baha got you, but no, you're still not any, and from our points of view, not better at all morally. You're still harming and taking the rights away from an animal, and we're not.
Yeah, I think the intent matters too, right? With any kind of situation we put ourselves in. So, like, if you're intending to go out there and harm someone, I think it's different than like, your actions, you buying into a system that may cause harm to someone. So, I think like they're trying to equivocate those to say like, oh, well, I only intentionally harm one person, so it's equal to like these several people being unintentionally harmed. So like even if we went back and made this like the same in the human case, you'd have to say like, well, eating one human would be better than maybe buying crops where maybe a certain amount of farmers were harmed in the process of those crops. So obviously most sane people would think that that's totally insane, and it's just
Yeah.
a crazy thing to basically go into.
Yeah, there's all kinds of reductives you can also bring up, and but to me, I like to keep things simple and say, you know, we don't view crop tests as rights violations and et cetera, things like that. But yeah, these are some of the questions that vegans need to understand more and really grasp and be able to express sufficiently to the opposition. Because if the more we say, oh, block or don't, I don't want to talk to you, the more that those kinds of people who say those things will just use that more and more, right? It'll propagate more and more. So vegans have to cut it, stop it whenever we see it.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people, like the same type of people, going into vegan debates on whether it be TikTok or somewhere else, and they'll say that line, and you get somebody that's less experienced and they don't know how to handle it, and then they do get frustrated, and then that same person will go to another vegan live and ask them that same question, and they'll just keep going, and then it is good for us to kind of engage us and think and say like, what is the actual response to this, and also I think too, be open and question veganism itself too, because it's not like we shouldn't be glued to this ideology where it's like we believe everything that's associated with this. I think there's certain notions where we should be like, let's question this to see if maybe we're wrong in this aspect. Would you think that that is something too we should do?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, there is no such thing as a moral principle that is completely black and white. There's gray areas in every single moral principle. There's gray areas. There's nuances. There's unknowns. There's debates always in any given moral principle. So veganism is no different, and we should always be challenging ourselves. We should always be questioning our own principles and seeing how far we can go with it. Um, Very important to do. But again, it's consistently the case in my experience and probably in yours that veganism leads to the best outcomes and consuming animal products doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to get into another thing I think that trips people up a lot too is like sentience. Like, what would you define sentience as? And also, how do we know that animals are sentient?
To me, sentience is the ability to emote, to feel, and to sense things. Um, but sense things not just like a computer senses something or a camera senses light, but also process those senses. And that requires a neural network, some kind of neural network. So yeah, I think that sentience is something we can see in animals because we can look at their behaviors. Behaviors are a great expression of sentience. We can look at their brains. We can scan brains and look at their brain activity. Just take a look at an animal. They can cry. They can. They have personalities. I used to have two dogs, and they had two distinct personalities, and you can tell who was who. Um, Look, there's many ways. Just like we know how some person's sentient, we can know how an animal's sentient. And all those things I mentioned.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. People say, "Well, how do you know that that dog actually is experiencing that?" People say things like that. But the reality is, it kind of comes like we don't know that other humans 100% are sentient as well, right? But we have to use like inferences and logic and psychology to determine that animals are sentient as well as other humans are sentient. So I think people struggle sometimes to grasp that, and I've seen a lot of vegans struggle to try to articulate this to non-vegans as well. So it's something that's good for people to look into.
Yeah, neuroscience is a very complicated and very expensive subject that everybody should learn a bit about. There's lots of animal behavioral studies out there that discuss these kinds of things about cow sentience and farm animal sentience. There's tons of studies out there. Go learn about it. Go learn how many animals can sense more than we can. Birds, pigs have way better ears, way better, ability to hear sounds. They have the frequency range is way more extensive than ours. They can see more than we can. They can see different, better, more colors. They can see UV radiation. There's all kinds um, of ways that animals are sentient that we're not sentient in. So the common thing to do is think that humans are like the most ultimate sentient being. We're the most amazing being ever. But no, animals are we far underestimate how incredible the animals are relative to ourselves, and we overinflate our own sentience and abilities.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think if you really look into like human development, you can see where, a lot of our traits, like something like anxiety, is very similar to like evolution, what other animals go through. We have a lot of rational thoughts and things along those lines because we are just animals. We're not that different than a chimp or a cow or a pig or anything along those lines. And people like to make it out like we're some kind of super being that's, ascended beyond what any other animals on the planet.
Yeah, I get that a lot. Animals aren't sentient. How do you know they feel? Or uh, go learn about how they feel. And we have the religious aspect gets in the way sometimes too. When people say, "Well, God tells me that I can eat animals. It's in the Bible." Okay, well, where does God say that you must harm animals or must abuse the animals? It doesn't tell you that. Um, would a loving God really want you to kill and abuse animals for no good reason if you don't have to consume animal products? Because look, we don't have to. So why would God command you to harm and abuse others if we know they can be abused? If you know that, if you tell a religious person if you were to, shove a knife in a dog, would it hurt them? Of course they would say yes, it hurts them. You have to be crazy to think that dogs don't feel pain. So why wouldn't cows or pigs, the animals that you're killing, why wouldn't they feel pain? It's a very simple inference. Um, but yes, religion can get in the way. People can say, "Well, God tells me I can do it." So it's a very common thing for lots of vegans to just dismiss and say, "No, no, that's wrong. Prove your God." A lot of people say, "Prove your God first." No, just that's going into muddy waters. Let's just grant them that God exists. Go into more detail as to why you should still be vegan, even if God exists. So Um, yeah, it's very complicated. And I think this is why a lot of people aren't vegan because it's just too complicated for them to really go into. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be complicated.
Have you seen Conspiracy by any chance?
No.
Okay, it kind of goes into like what you're saying. It kind of, which I think is more effective too. It argues from the position of where somebody's religious, and then it talks like, well, why should a religious person be vegan? Like, what are the consistencies with it? And to me, I think that that is a better approach to it as well. Like you're saying, versus being like, well, God doesn't exist, and starting from that position,
Mhm.
because I think then you, like you said, you muddy the water too much, and you also are switching the topic where people stop thinking what the focus is, which is like
Right.
animal rights, and they start thinking of getting into theism and certain things like that that just kind of derails the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't want to let them get away with switching the goalpost or moving away from topics. Uh, and we don't want them to just let them disregard the animals and the main focus of veganism.
And something I've seen you have a discussion with a lot of people on is like value levels as well. Like a lot of people say, well, I value animals way less than I value humans. What is your response to something like that?
That's compatible with veganism. I can value a person more than a cow, more than an ant, but it doesn't mean that we must treat an animal, or it doesn't mean we must think that an animal is just as equal to humans. We're not saying that cows are equal to humans. What we're saying is that they meet sufficient value levels. They meet a threshold of value that renders us the ability to say, yes, those animals should be harmed. So, because animals have sufficient value, in other words, sentience and the ability to be conscious, things like that, those qualities meet the threshold of granting them moral consideration and rights. That's all we're saying. It doesn't matter how much value they give you, or it doesn't how much value they have past that threshold is irrelevant. But as long as they meet a threshold of value, then we should consider them in our moral framework. Um, and the reason why we say that there's a threshold is because when it comes to humans, again, name the trait or equalizing of traits, if there's a person who had the same, for example, intelligence as a pig, but the same sentience and the ability to be conscious as a pig, well, we wouldn't just go ahead and think it's okay to slaughter that person who is, mentally ill or mentally disabled. The same applies to the pig. The traits have been equalized. There's no difference between those two beings, the pig and the person, in terms of value. So let's just consider them within our moral framework. There's no reason why we should be able to harm the pig, but not the person.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you think about it from even just a human perspective, like most people say they value their family more than a stranger, right? But that doesn't mean that the stranger is worthy of less moral consideration than their family would be. So that's something I usually say to people, and then they kind of say they're like, "Yeah, you're right." Like I would, it's a burning building scenario or like the trolley problem. Like I would save my mother before I would save some random stranger, but that doesn't mean, given another scenario, you would harm a stranger when you don't have to. It's the same sort of situation with veganism.
Yeah, yeah. This is another area where people can get into bad areas if they just say, "Well, that's just how I feel," or whatever. It's a bit more nuanced than that.
Yeah, so you had a debate with Parker too. I want to dive into that a little bit because um, he engages with a lot of other type of discussions as well. Like he's very pro LGBT, and he talks about like politics and stuff. What do you think? Like, why do you think he was so resistant to talking about something like veganism?
Yeah, well, I don't want to talk about any person in particular, but in general,
Yeah.
yes. What I do see is that people are resistant to veganism because
Mhm.
it counters their daily lives, their daily habits. We don't like changing our habits. Take an average person, you tell them to change something in their life, they probably don't do it. It's more likely they don't do it than they do it. Take, for example, dieting or working out, or New Year's was just here. How many people stuck to their New Year's resolutions? And the vast minority of people. So it's very, very more. It's more appealing to not change than to change for humans. Um, so yes, resistance builds just on that. Plus all the other baggage that comes with it. You know, religious views and moral views and all kinds of political views and family views, cultural views. There's all kinds of resistances that can build up against veganism.
Yeah, I think that's a difficult thing too when you're talking about veganism because it requires action on somebody's part, where like some of these other justice movements don't really require that much action. It's just purely inaction. So you are asking people to change their habits, so it is more difficult. But I think that's kind of why it might be easier for people to engage in other things, but not engage in something like veganism. And I guess it's kind of akin to, if I was to say it's close to something, maybe like being more conscious of climate change and things like that, because it is that does require you to change your habits as well to have a positive outcome, where it's some of these other things are don't require actions.
Yeah, and a lot of the initial understanding of veganism is that it's such a different lifestyle. It's really not. It's kind of like learning how to ride a bike, right? Like at first you need the things on the side, the wheels on the side, but then you get used to it. You learn how to ride with two wheels instead of the four, and it becomes just easy. It's like muscle memory, right? So I don't even think about veganism in my daily life. I don't think about it. I go to the store. I don't have to like sit there and go, okay, is this vegan or not? I learned. I've learned what is vegan and what is not. I know what to buy, and it's my life. Yes, at first has changed. Lifestyle has changed, but after a few months, let alone a year, it's like nothing changed in my life. It really feels like nothing changed, except the fact that I no longer view animals as objects, but as beings that we should protect and not harm.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost similar to when you like adopt a new hobby, to where the first time you're getting into it, it's very difficult. You know, you're looking, oh, this is going to be impossible for me to start. And then as you get into it more and more, it becomes easier and easier. And over time, like you said, it becomes a second nature to where it's like, same with myself now. It's like, I don't even think about it. You know, it's just like, this is
Right.
reality. And it seems like it's just an everyday thing that's so easy.
Right. Exactly.
I wanted to say there's when it comes to like certain things in science as well as like veganism, do you think there's like um, political bias to like where people don't want to engage in this because they say, oh, well, you know, I have these certain beliefs, I can't be a vegan, or, you know, I can't be an atheist because I have these beliefs, or, you know, things along those lines. Do you think that that's something that plays in this as well?
Political bias. Yeah, I think that political bias can. Well, look, a lot of the rhetoric on the right is that they have to maintain what's masculine and manly.
Yeah.
And a lot of people on the right hold to that principle that whatever is manlier is better, and when you exhibit masculine traits, dominance, and all that stuff, it's better. So yeah, that can get in the way, right? A lot of so a very fundamental principle to people on the right is being powerful, strong, wealthy, and so yes, a lot of people like that can view veganism as something feminine and inferior.
Yeah.
Um, and there's been many studies on this which show that people view vegans as more feminine. And part of eliminating that kind of bias is more vegans going out there and expressing what it really means. Um, but yeah, this is a very hard thing to fight. All this resistance, all this bias against vegans. Because look, that's the first thing they tell you. Oh, veganism's for weak, skinny, feminine girls. Um, when that's not true at all. There
Yeah.
are many, there's not just guys that are vegan, but people who are not skinny, people who are very masculine. That's all nonsense. Right? But that's just another way for them to just excuse themselves from entertaining veganism. Just say, oh, it's not, it's just feminine. And it's a very common position amongst the right. So, yeah, the common view on the right is that veganism is not is inferior for these reasons, and it's something that we also need to fight.
Yeah, and that's kind of like why I do the content I do because you hear it all the time. People, oh well, I go to the gym, I can't eat it. I'm this super masculine guy, I can't be vegan. And I think it's really important to kind of break these stereotypes and say like you don't have to be a specific type of person to go vegan. It's just like a moral obligation that anybody can adopt. And it's the same thing like whether you have certain political beliefs or you have a certain culture or a religion. These things don't stop you from being vegan. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. There's nothing stopping you from being vegan when it comes to those things. You're only stopping yourself. And yeah, the I mean, look, your name is Plants and Plates. That shows that you want to change the way people view vegans. You want to be a bodybuilder. No, lots of other vegan bodybuilders out there who do content creation for that specific reason. So I think that's a good thing to do. But um, I think that we can also educate people without having to be bodybuilders about why veganism isn't a feminine thing, and there's many other ways we can do that. But yes, I think
Yeah, I
that's
think it's more of a monumental challenge too, but I think also telling people like having that viewpoint of like, well, X thing is not masculine, therefore it's bad. I think that's also a bad way to just look at the world around you
yeah,
because then they're just writing things, they're putting things in these two categories where it's like, if you're speaking out for this social justice movement, you are, effeminate and all this stuff. And it's just like it's counterproductive to anything, like viewing anything in society, and it's just like not a very logical way to go about it.
yeah, for sure.
So when it comes to, I know you talk about like climate change as well. Do you think going vegan could help the climate at all as well?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, veganism. In fact, that's actually one of the. It's funny because I talked. I don't know if you know Michael Mann. He's a PhD climate scientist, and he refuses to even mention veganism when it comes to climate action. He refuses. In fact, he's publicly said that don't worry about veganism. Um, he doesn't talk about it. And I think this is the craziest thing to me, that
Yeah.
veganism is actually, in my eyes, in the eyes of the data, one of the best things, one of the greatest things you can do on an individual basis to stop climate change. It reduces your carbon footprint by up to 75%. It reduces your water usage by up to 33%. I mean, it can do all kinds of things for the environment, lower methane emissions and greenhouse gas emissions and water and land. It can increase the amount of land we have available to all of humanity. Um, yeah, I think veganism is one of the best things you can do for stopping climate change, as well as going electric with the car, solar, things like that.
Mhm.
So yeah, climate change is it's also one of my topics that I love to talk about as well. But the fact that people don't talk about veganism as an option, and the fact that so many climate activists, so called, don't even mention it,
Yeah.
is just something that's so sad to me, because it's so easy to do. And if you, I don't think you can call yourself a climate activist if you aren't vegan. I don't know if you can,
Yeah.
because I don't know of a better way to slow down the effects of climate change than to be vegan or plant based.
It seems to me like people want to kind of shift the burden. They want to shift it onto society and say, well, these factories and all of these needs to shift, but they don't want to like question what they're doing themselves. So, like you said, I mean, there's a lot of options, veganism being the biggest one, but like there's a lot of options you can do personally to try to change your impact. And then we can go after the societal. Once I think you align your actions with your end goal, then it becomes less hypocritical in my eyes.
Yeah, that's another cop out. Oh, capitalism. There's no such thing as ethical morality under capitalism. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
Uh, First of all, capitalism or socialism or any kind of economic doctrine does not have any impact on your specific individual behaviors. You can choose under any economic system to kill an animal or abuse an animal. Or so There's nothing about socialism that would allow you or stop you from abusing an animal. It doesn't exist. Furthermore, you can use capitalism instead of shunning away capitalism, saying, "Oh no, it's terrible." Why not leverage capitalism in our favor as vegans? Because first of all, look at the introduction of certain foods in these big food chains. That's good. We want that to happen. We want big food chains to introduce more vegan foods into their menus. Capitalism can do that. If more people demand the product, it gets produced more. Less animals die, less animals are abused. Come on, how could you be against that? Unfortunately, we live in a system in which capitalism is here to stay. It's not going to go anywhere. The more important issue is to, uh, I think, instead of trying to like you were saying before, instead of trying to tackle the economic foundation of the world, let's start with something a little bit more easier first. Let's start, not abusing animals when you can do that right now. And don't tell me it's more expensive to go vegan. Some of the most cheapest foods on the planet are plant-based. Rices and beans and pastas and all kinds of vegetables and fruits. Don't tell me that you can't be vegan, or that capitalism is preventing you from being a better person. That's nonsense. Instead of shunning away, let's leverage it. Let's use it for our advantage. Instead of letting cattle farmers and cattle ranchers and all those guys buying politicians, lobbying for the banning of cultivated meats, like happened here in Florida. We're letting them get away with the capitalistic. Uh, we're letting them leverage capitalism in their favor, and then we
Yep.
sit back and go, "Wow, wow, wow! Let's cry about it." No, let's stop that. So let's attack them in terms of that.
And I think like we were talking about politics before, I think that's like a useful thing you could say to somebody. Let's say somebody is like a little more right wing. Instead of trying to change their whole perspective, you can bring something like that up where, hey, the government's banning this new product that's coming out. Does that sound like that's something that's very like free market to you? And I think like if somebody is right wing, it's better to go from like a perspective of like, go from where they're coming from and basically saying like they shouldn't be banning cultured meat, they shouldn't be giving these subsidies out. And I think that kind of aligns more with somebody's values. And I think it's easier to reach people when you start from where their perspective is and then try to go from there. Do you think that's like an effective tool to kind of use when you're discussing with these people?
It's the only effective tool. It's not effective to sit there and just be resistant against people. Um, at every chance you get, the best and most effective option is to always be agreeable with the opposition. Always try to see things from their point of view, and try to argue from their point of view. That's the best way to do it. And yes, you have to know your audience. If your audience is from the right or left or wherever they are, try to understand that. And as vegan activists, we have to understand the political atmosphere as well. Look, there's a lot of responsibility that vegan activists have, and although the world doesn't see it yet, there's a lot of responsibility that we have, just as many civil rights and other activists of the past had. But they all did it. Some of the greatest civil rights movements, some of the greatest movements in history, social movements, occurred without violence. There's no reason to be angry and mean and mad and fight. There are very, very non-violent ways to make great change happen, and it's already happening to some degree. And we can continue. It's not that hard. We just have to be less abrasive towards non-vegans, even though they're very abrasive towards us. We have to just get collected again, and recognize that we cannot do the same to them. Even though they get to do it to us, we have to approach it in a more calm but informative way.
Yeah, and I think it's about basically extending the tent out and bringing as many people in as possible too, because I think a lot of vegans get caught up where like, hey, we can only talk to these specific people that agree with us, on these things, but we should be going out and talking to everybody, right? And having these discussions and saying, well, you're a religious person, so I'm still going to talk to you about veganism. I'm not just going to write you off because you have this opinion. And I think from what I've seen, a lot of vegans will engage in that, and I just think it's counterproductive to the movement.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't want to sit here and say that, I don't want to deter people from being vegan activists. I think if you are a vegan activist, great. It's better off that you are a vegan activist than not, no matter what you say or how you approach it. But there, there's room for improvement, and that applies to me too. I've
Yeah.
changed a lot in the past year or so. So if I can do it, you can do it. Anybody can do it.
Yeah, that's why I think in reach is really important because I think people focus on outreach a lot, where it's like let's talk to non-vegans, but I think it's also important for people like you and I have these discussions and bounce ideas off each other and see like are we going about doing this the right way, or challenging our own perspectives and finding out like what the true best way to go about doing this actually is.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. And this year, I'd like to have more discussions with vegans, content creators, especially lots of the women, because they take a lot of crap as well,
Yeah,
a lot more than we do as men.
absolutely.
And so, yeah, I witnessed all kinds of terrible things, terrible ways that men would behave around vegan women on their own lives.
Yeah.
So it bothers me. I don't like it, but I think we should. I think that women deserve way more credit than they're given right now, and just I think time will tell. I think the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years, veganism is going to be seen differently. It's going to be more commended more than it is right now. But we have to continue.
Yeah, and I think, like you're saying with female activists, I think the issue is like a lot of men just write them off and just don't like engage in their ideas, whether it even be in our own vegan community too. So I think it's important to listen to people what they're saying, and it doesn't matter who's saying something. It just matters like what's the content that the person's saying, and listening to that and engaging with the ideas. So I do agree with you that that's a huge issue that we face.
Yeah, I don't even want to speak about what guys have said to them, kind of sexualizing it, discussions, and it's disgusting what they're doing.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's sort of a shame like that. I see the practicality in it where like I have discussions with people that go to the gym and work out and they're masculine. They say, oh, you can do it, I can do it too. But the thing is like it's weird to me that they'll only take that from when I say it. But if like a woman says that, then it's just like they're not going to engage with the ideas, even if they're right what they're saying. They're just going to say, well, no, it's not for me. That's somebody else is saying that. So it's just I think that's a horrible thing as well.
yeah, it's and now we're going into very underlying, very fundamental discrepancies in the social atmosphere in terms of misogyny, things like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, I think that vegan women are going to be way more committed in the future than they are right now. Right now, it's a terrible atmosphere for them.
Yeah, and I think it shows something to these women's character too, where they're the largest percentage of vegans as well.
Mhm.
They're able to grasp this more than men are, and it's any way you cut it, really, because we know all the logical arguments. It makes the most sense to be vegan. So you're looking at this just objectively. Women are understanding this way better than men are.
Yeah, for sure. They It seems very easy for them to grasp it, whereas men just all over the place. They don't know what they're talking about. They're it's like they're hitting their foot on. They keep tripping over themselves. They don't know what they're doing. Um, yeah,
Yeah, hopefully that changes in the future. But just to wrap things up, Mike, I just want to say, like, what is your direction for your content going forward?
Um, I'm going to be making content forever. I'm not going to stop doing it because I think social media is a gift. It's been given to us. And I see social media as a tool for promoting critical thought, science, reasoning, veganism, all these principles and morals and perspectives, I think, ought and deserve to be propagated via social media. I mean, no other time period has ever had this kind of ability.
Yeah,
Now, do you understand that today anybody can go online and gain thousands, even millions of people viewing them? Anybody, literally any person on the planet, anybody. This is a powerful tool. This is a powerful time, and we have to take advantage of it, especially if you're a vegan. If you're a vegan and you're not using social media, what are you doing? Just spread good information. And I'm going to be making content forever. And my approach is, look, the left doesn't inspire a kind of identity like the right does. Now, the right is a very toxic. The right generates a very toxic uh, identity in the sense that you have to be manly and wealthy to be. That's the best. The best thing to do is to be wealthy and manly. But there's a deeper identity that we could have, and we can perhaps express on the left. Right now, we don't really have that identity. Right now, we're kind of confused. But I think that this all can be encompassed by a scientific perspective, where you're understanding the world through science and you're disciplined in a scientific manner, which means you're thinking about things that you're doing, you're asking the right questions, you're inquiring, you're allowing your curiosity to lead you to places that otherwise you would not have if you weren't disciplined in that kind of methodology of science. I it also People think science is just a thing that you do to get a good grade on the test. It's not just what science is. Science goes deeper than that. Science can have implications for your ethics. When you understand that humans and animals are cousins, we are animals, and pigs and cows are our cousins, evolutionarily speaking. When you understand that there's a deep interconnectedness between us and the animal kingdom, us and animals and plants, and when you understand that even more fundamental than that, we are stardust. Each and every one of us are just collections of particles that were created and forged in stars billions of years ago that exploded and gave rise to the earth and planet. When you understand that the fuller context to the physical world around us and how we fit into this in a scientific way, that kind of changes the way you see others, people, animals, and everybody. So that's what that's the kind of message I try to drive home with my social media, scientific perspective, the big ideas. And veganism can fit in there. It kind of extends from that. So, yeah, I'm very passionate about that kind of message, scientific message. I think science is one of the most powerful and most unifying forces on this planet. And instead of the shit show that, can I say that shit show that social media is right now, where it's just a mess of garbage, people spreading all kinds of misinformation, and in a time where we literally live in the age of information, yet we are taking information for granted. We no longer care about correct information. We no longer care about information that may lead to a more prosperous, more moral world. That saddens me, and that's why I try my best to be a kind of force that uh, spreads a more positive message using a scientific perspective.
yeah, I think that's a great way to go about it, and I hope that more people in the future will engage with that, and they'll take the scientific facts and they'll work that into what their opinions are on things. But I just want to say thanks for coming on, Mike, and thanks for informing people on this. And if somebody's looking to follow your content, where can they find you?
TikTok, just my name, Mike Brigandi. YouTube, my name. I don't hide behind any kind of guises. Or I don't have nothing to hide. I'm just my name. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, thanks for coming on, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Appreciate your work as well and everything you do.
Thanks, Mike. Have a good one.